This clip speaks to how Jordan Peterson came into international fame, or infamy, as you wish to see it, in the first place, which was here in Canada with the context of Bill C-16, which was legislation to add gender expression and gender identity to the Human Rights Code. And Peterson, we're going to talk about it in the interview after this clip, but basically what had happened is Peterson had put on a YouTube video called Professor for Free Expression or something along these lines, and really put this in the framework of they're going to throw us in jail for not using pronouns. And this is compelled speech by the government, and this is a threat to our freedom, and this is like a big step down the slippery slope to totalitarianism. And you know, we'll talk in the interview about the certain, while there was massive exaggerations in that, it did speak to certain zeitgeist, certain things that people identified with. So then what happens is, and this is where what you're going to see in the clip, is there's a big attack on him and a lot of people supporting him. And then there's these students that organize a free speech rally at the University of Toronto, where he was employed as a professor of psychology. And they're having real trouble getting the thing started because there's people interfering with the speaker system. And then you see Jordan just decides to go a cappella.
Okay, so let's try this again. The reason I'm defending freedom of speech is because that's how people with different opinions settle their opinions in a civil society. And if we lose that, we'll lose so much you can't imagine. It's as a consequence of free speech and the ability to speak that people can put their finger on problems, articulate what those problems are, solve them, and come to a consensus. And we risk losing that. Now, the radical left activists are trying to turn this into an argument about sexual politics. And it's only nominally about sexual politics. It's about language that's designed to control our freedom of expression.
So the first thing you see in that clip for me is this, the concept of platforming and deplatforming, and this thing that a lot of people on the left have taken on, which is the idea of like the fight for freedom in the 21st century involves making sure people like Jordan Peterson don't get to speak. And their tactic in this situation was to bring some white noise on a phone and plug into the speaker, right? This is the speaker that Jordan was going to be speaking from, and they were plugging in their cell phones into it and playing white noise really loudly. And then you see Jordan's reaction, which is pretty intense. And then you see it bring out this side of Jordan, which is a little scary, given some of the things that we know about him now, in particularly his academic interests for many years of studying despots and tyrants and their rhetoric and how they use psychology and all this stuff. And just the tone in his voice and his face, and as he's going on about free speech and how these people are trying to control us and speaking to this argument of freedom and totalitarianism and really turning up the volume. And I think the other element of this is he's, much like Lawrence Southern you described before, like he's taking a group that's already vastly misunderstood by the majority of people, and he's kind of playing off that misunderstanding to make it seem like they're a much bigger threat, like and what they're asking for is such a huge threat. And as you mentioned earlier, the bill has since passed, and nobody's gone to jail for not using the right pronouns or any of these things that he was warning us about that was going to happen as a result of Bill 16 haven't happened. So this clip for me brings together all these elements. I don't know, what was it like filming it, or what are your thoughts on some of these things?
Yeah. So first of all, like Jordan, we showed in the documentary that, part of Jordan's research has been kind of studying the ways in which somebody commands a crowd and what they do and what they say, and sometimes they pause, or the words they use and everything. So Jordan is really aware of those rhetorics. I think for most people that I talk to that aren't that are like cool with trans people, like they don't really like they're fine with that, or they'll use the pronoun like on a personal situation rather than hypothetical. They were drawn to the event because they liked Jordan spoke to something that they felt. Hey, why can't I say that? Why can't I say that most like black people that are shot by other black people, for example? Why can't I say that there's a difference between men and women? Shit like that, right? Now, it could be as crude as how I just said it without the nuance, but then the response that somebody would get is like, well, you are a racist fascist, rather than actually you just said something kind of racial or racist, right? So then, but even if you said it in the right way, it becomes very personal. So Jordan spoke to like a bigger zeitgeist that people were like, hey man, you said the thing I've always wanted to say, and what do you mean? And then there was a bit of a simplification around Bill C-16 and what it is. And the truth of the matter is that we did all the reading. Like many of these soft laws, like interpretive, most laws are interpretive, but this one really is. It's like it really just depends on the details and what the judge, for example, even if it gets to that, most don't even get to that level of like we actually going to court. Like it's very rare. So you know, so
is it fair to say that?
Yeah.
Sorry. Is it fair to say then that a lot of what rose him to prominence, the narrative that he pushed was oversimplified on his part, but he's also responding to, and I've said this quite often with Jordan Peterson, like his timing was such that, it happened at the time when just generally the discourse around activism and improving our world is simplified, and people are shrinking people down. White people are this, and men, and so we have this like clash of simplified narratives happening. What do you think of that? And then one more thing is like Jordan gets criticized sometimes, I don't know, fairly or unfairly, that his audience is like men. Is there a unique, special resonance, value for what he's saying to men right now in your view, or no?
Yeah. So the first part is that, first of all, like about the whole dialogue thing, I mean, people always say this, like, because it's what it seems like. But like, Jordan never really even slightly entertained the thought of actually talking with like a trans person that was a academic, like not a 22-year-old, right? They want Lee Ayrton. Lee Ayrton is the one. They are a like a gender academic, and we interviewed them several times. And Lee Ayrton's a reasonable person, not like bombastic and all that. Lee Ayrton wanted to talk with Jordan, just have a beer. Jordan didn't want to do that. Like there was never a dialogue, and I don't think it ever really was about that for Jordan. It was like, hold on, okay. When I saw that video, I'm like, okay, that's provocative. It's interesting. It's thought provoking. It's like an interesting theory of like, but like my first question is like, okay, so shouldn't you go and talk with somebody who's trans and maybe around your age? Like there's a few at UFT, like at our teachers, but that never happened. And I think it because he didn't want it. He didn't want that. There's a degree to which Jordan played a kind of martyr card. Like it would have been really, really good for him if he went to jail, if you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean?
Mandela, you would have the Mandela bump on his popularity.
Oh, buddy,
yeah.
like, oh yeah. So Brenda Custom was like, no, Jordan, you don't get to go to jail. And Jordan was just kind of like, look, I'm having all these opportunities. Stefan Molyneux really likes me. I'm going to talk with him twice. I'm on Joe Rogan. I'm blowing up there. I'll do Joe Rogan 2 more times. My book's coming out. I'm being invited and flown around to churches. It's like this. I've never done this, man. This is amazing. This is what I always wanted. I'm not gonna go and waste my afternoon talking with some trans person.
And potentially, not only to have that talk, but also potentially not ruined, but water. Maybe the message changes a bit once
Yeah.
he has a meaningful conversation, and so that's interesting.